vamos a ya dejar relajo. Okay, today we are going to talk about the age of revolutions. The age of revolutions. The age of revolutions. Ok, todo esto comenzó, como ustedes saben, gracias a al movimiento que tenía estos tres pensadores. ¿Se acuerdan de los Enlightenment? John Locke, Montesquieu y Juan Jacobo Rousseau. John Rousseau. Esos tres trajeron nuevas ideas a lo que era la manera de cómo gobernar, y ahí trajeron la idea de la división del poder y de la democracia y los derechos de los ciudadanos. ¿Ok? Muy bien. Revolution and Reform in England. Comenzó en England, en Inglaterra. Enlightenment ideas inspired commoneers, a las personas comunes y corrientes, to oppose monarchy that rule without concern for the people's needs. However, monarchy wouldn't give up their privilege. Como siempre, ellos decían que como tienen el poder del Papa, tienen el Papa de su lado, entonces ellos tienen un designio divino. Decía que ellos son los que tienen que mandar aquí en la tierra. For many years, the English Parliament and the English monarchy had an easy relationship. Tenía un conflicto entre ellos, de la monarquía y el Parlamento. Parliament demanded that its rights and power be respected. However, the monarchy stood for rule by divine rights. Decía que ellos tenían el poder divino, y por eso es que ellos hacían lo que ellos, they please, whatever they please. The relationship between English monarchy and parliament got worse. Se puso peor y peor y peor. Y vino lo que se llamó en aquel entonces la Guerra Civil de Inglaterra. The conflict led to the start of the English Civil War in 1642. Now, Oliver Cromwell, a member of parliament, formed a cavalry force and quickly became one of the world's military leaders. Que es una figura donde se ve la guerra civil, donde tumbaron a la monarquía. Now, in 1649, the king was convicted of treason and beheaded. Le cortaron la cabeza, papá. After the war ended, Cromwell took control of England, Scotland, and Ireland, serving under the title of Lord. No había rey, no había nada. Él era que se encargaba de todo eso. ¿Ya? Sin embargo, la gente, como es gente, como siempre, dijeron, hombre, mejor que venga otra vez un rey, vamos a poner a alguien de rey, como siempre. By 1660, many English people were tired of turmoil, porque había muchas revueltas, and wanted to restore the monarchy. Otra vez la monarquía. They invited the dead king's son, el hijo del rey muerto que le cortaron la cabeza, to return and rule England as Charles II, Carlos II. They made Charles promise to allow parliaments to keep the power it had won in the war. Pero ese era el trato. Que el parlamento siga trabajando y que tenga su propio poder. Hay que ver qué dijo él. Now, when Charles died, cuando murió Charles II, his brother James became king. The trouble began again. Ajá, el hermano fue el que hizo la revuelta. ¿No? So James II, an unpopular Catholic, tried to promote his religion belief in England. Y Inglaterra era protestante. Acuérdense que hubo un rey que se quería divorciar porque quería tener herederos, pero el Papa le dijo no. Y él creó la que es la iglesia protestante en Inglaterra. Por eso que ya en Inglaterra la mayoría era protestante en aquel entonces. Okay, entonces vino este señor James II, donde quería instaurar el catolicismo, y ya hubo conflicto ¿con quién? Contra los protestantes. As a result, the parliament invited the Protestant William of Orange. Llamaron al señor William of Orange, James' sons-in-law. El cuñado, el yerno. Cuñado, son-in-law es el cuñado. To invade England, para que invada England, y entonces el señor salió corriendo. James II salió corriendo. Dice James II England. Este señor Orange, William of Orange. When William and his wife arrived arrived in England in 1688. James, este señor que está aquí con el cabello largo, James II y su familia, and his family fled to France. Salieron corriendo porque no querían que le cortaran la cabeza. Okay, new rights for the English people. Now, Parliament offered the throne to William the Orange and Mary, his wife. On one condition, otra vez la misma condición, they had to accept the English Bill of Rights. Era un documento donde era parecido a la Carta Magna, which limited the ruler's power and recognized some right for people. Now, the monarchy, like everyone else, were subjected to the laws of the land. This principle is known as the rule of law. Bien, ahora vamos a la democracia en América. Colonies there grew increasingly unhappy with both the king and the parliament. ¿Por qué? Porque ellos eran los que gobernaban allá, a pesar de que ellos no tenían una representación en el parlamento, los colonialistas acá. No. Many colonialists protested British laws they thought were unfair. As conflict continued, colonial leaders met to resolve the crisis. At this meeting, called the First Continental Congress, the delegates decided to resist the British. Como la resistencia, nada de los británicos. They created militias, crearon las milicias, a group of armed people to protect themselves from the British troops stated in the colonies. Ahí comenzó la independencia y en el 4 de julio de 1776 fue la cosa. Now, American Revolution began, comenzó un año antes, in April 1775 when a militia exchanged fire with British. Ahí mismo, así mismo comenzó. Aquí mismo también comenzó la invasión así. Hubo un intercambio y mataron a un soldado americano y ahí agarraron la excusa para invadir a Panamá. So the same thing happened over here. Exchange fire with British troops. So in 1776, the colonial leader gathered again at the meeting. Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. Aquí está Jefferson, está Franklin, Washington, and Jefferson. La Declaración de Independencia, el 4 de 1776. Grábense eso, 76. The Declaration of Independence said that people unhappy with their government had the right to change it. A cambiarlo, porque no estamos de acuerdo con ello. This statement builds on the idea of Rousseau, Juan Jacobo Rousseau, as well as Locke, John Locke. The Declaration of Independence was signed by representatives from all the colonies, las 13 colonias, and new nations, the United States of America was born. Comenzó los gringos comenzaron. The new government. In 1783, the British government finalmente agreed to end the fighting and recognize the United States. Imagínense, del 76 hasta el 83. 4 y 3 son 7 años peleando y finalmente ellos ya lo aceptan. Estados Unidos como una independiente de ellos. American leaders then met to form a new government. They wrote a set of rules called the Article of Confederation. Aquí está el Article of Confederation. The Americans were afraid that strong central government would be too much like monarchy. So Virginian farmer James Madison was a main author of the new plan, the Constitution. Al señor, te le agradecemos la primera constitución. ¿A quién? Al señor John Madison. This document reflected the idea of Montesquieu, who had proposed the separation of powers. Acuérdense que él dijo que el poder se debería dividir en 3, en el legislativo, judicial y el presidencial. Very good. Now, okay, let's stop right here and then let's watch a video that talks about let me see, what caused the English Civil War. Okay, let's watch.
On the 22nd of August 1642, King Charles I raised his standard at Nottingham. A signal to his supporters to rally to his defence, this marked the start of the English Civil War between King and Parliament. The conflict would last 6 years and end with the execution of the King on the 30th of January 1649, having been declared a tyrant, traitor, murderer and public enemy to the good people of the nation. What had caused the Civil War? Between 1629 and 1640, Charles ruled England without a parliament. He had dismissed his MPs in 1629 after they presented him with the Petition of Right. Drawing on Magna Carta of 1215, the petition protested against the king's raising of taxes not approved by Parliament and his imprisonment of those who refused to pay. Charles felt he was entitled to do this because he believed in the divine right of kings, that his authority to rule came directly from God, and that to God alone he was accountable. This 11-year period is known as the Personal Rule, during which Charles implemented policies without having to answer to anyone. Among these policies were controversial religious reforms. On the advice of his Archbishop of Canterbury, William Laud, churches were ordered to replace altars, recover their decorated vestments, and parishioners were forced to kneel to receive the sacrament. To Protestants, Laud's plan seemed very much like a return to Catholicism, a fear increased by the supposed influence of Queen Henrietta Maria, a practicing Catholic herself. Opponents of these changes argued that as head of the Church of England and defender of the faith, Charles was supposed to uphold the established religion. For Charles, being head of the Church meant he could impose whatever religious policies he wanted. The resistance to Laud's policies started in Scotland with the imposition of a new prayer book in 1637. The resulting bishops' wars of 1638 to 1640 between the king and Scottish Presbyterians, a branch of Protestantism, foreshadowed the conflict to come and depleted an already low treasury. Normally, the king would now ask Parliament to raise taxes, but unwilling to call this body, Charles turned to other, increasingly unpopular methods to raise money. In 1634, Charles had imposed a tax known as ship money on coastal communities, something which had traditionally been employed to fund the navy in times of national emergency. Charles now decided to extend this tax across the country. In 1636, the pamphleteer and lawyer William Prynne argued that this was illegal because it had not been agreed by Parliament. John Hampden, a landowner and politician from Buckinghamshire, resisted paying the tax in full on the grounds that it was illegal, and he was taken to court in 1637. While the judges voted 7-5 in the king's favour, Charles's authority had been challenged. Others followed Hampden's example, and soon tax avoidance became endemic. By 1640, Charles had run out of money and was forced to call a parliament in April to raise a new tax to support the war in Scotland. After 11 years of being ignored, MPs were unwilling to approve his demands. Charles dismissed this parliament after only 3 weeks. However, after a military defeat, he was compelled to summon a second parliament in November. This became known as the Long Parliament, sitting until 1653. The Long Parliament refused to provide the king with money. In August 1641, they outlawed ship money, and in November they presented the king with the Grand Remonstrance, a long list of complaints about the years of personal rule. Importantly, they did not challenge Charles directly, but instead blamed his malignant advisers and evil counsellors. Charles responded by calling the remonstrance unparliamentary and rejected its claims. Relations between king and parliament were at breaking point. To make matters worse, rebellion broke out in Ireland. English and Scottish Protestant settlers were massacred, and rumours abounded that this was the start of a Catholic plot, supposedly supported by the king himself. Not only did the rising add to Charles's financial problems, but Parliament and the king also clashed over who should command the army to be sent to Ireland. Charles left London in January 1642 after an unsuccessful attempt to arrest 5 ringleaders of the opposition in Parliament on charges of treason. He would not return until 1649, when he re-entered his capital as a prisoner. In the summer of 1642, Parliament declared it was resolved upon the question that an army shall be forthwith raised for the safety of the king's person, defence of both houses of Parliament, and preserving of the true religion, the laws, liberty, and peace of the kingdom. The Civil War had begun.
Okay, guys, with this picture, we go halfway to this chapter, and then tomorrow we'll finish this chapter. Okay, guys, then it's 10:40. So we're gonna stop right here, and then we'll continue tomorrow, okay? See you tomorrow, guys. Bye-bye. Take care. See ya.
Bye, teacher.